Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at what looks like another Mauser export style of bayonet, but it's actually quite unique and different to any other Mauser bayonet produced. Now, this is commonly called the Siamese Type 45, and that's the correct nomenclature for it. However, initially it was called the RS121, and that was the date in the Siamese calendar that it was brought into service. Now, this bayonet was made initially to fit the RS121 rifle, and that rifle came in two types. And when they later changed the calendar system, and renamed the rifles, they gave them two distinct names: the Type 45, which were produced in 1902, and the Type 46, they were produced in 1903, and they were very slightly different. Now, these bayonets were made under a Mauser license by the Imperial Japanese Army Arsenal in Tokyo, and 40,000 of them were produced in total. So 20,000 were produced in 1902, and a further 20,000 in 1903. Now, the history behind this bayonet, it's really a good little look into how awful colonialism really was in the late 1800s. So, at the time, Siam was a reasonably sized country. However, they had two colonial aggressors to either side of them. To the east, they had France, who were pushing through what's now Vietnam. And to the west, they had the English. And both of these countries were gradually, piece by piece, taking bits of Siam from Siam, obviously. And they were really putting a bit of an embargo on the country, preventing them from sourcing their own firearms. So they really had to look elsewhere to find firearms. And you'll see, if you look at all the different kind of stuff that they did eventually get, they had some Gewehr 71s, they had Mannlicher 1888s and 1890s in very small numbers. They just had a whole range of rifles from sort of countries that weren't associated or weren't friendly with France or the UK. Now, the English and French were really blocking the purchase of arms, preventing Siam from becoming stronger and really defending themselves from the colonial pressure that they were placing upon them. So, eventually, Mauser in Germany, Imperial Germany, agreed to they agreed to produce bayonets and rifles, but they didn't have the means to produce them because they were producing so many for themselves and the Ottoman Empire at the time. So what they ended up doing was licensing Japan, being, as I said, the Imperial Japanese Army Arsenal Tokyo, to produce these bayonets and rifles. And initially that was in the year 121 of the, see if I can pronounce this, I probably can't, RATTANAKASIN SOC, which is their calendar. However, in 1913 they changed the calendar to the standard Buddhist calendar, which is about 500 years ahead of the Gregorian calendar. And the year that, or 1902, when these were first brought into service on the Buddhist calendar, is 2445. So they went with Type 45, named after the Buddhist calendar. I should point out that the bayonet is the Type 45. The cartridge, which was a 8mm by 50mm rimmed, was also the Type 45 cartridge. The initial rifles in 1902 were called the Type 45. However, the rifles that were released in 1903 were the Type 46. So sometimes a little bit of a confusion there, but they all fell under the banner of RS121. Now, these rifles and bayonets did not see use in the First World War. So in the First World War, Siam did send an expeditionary force into Europe, but they went under France and they used French equipment. However, in the Second World War, Siam sided with Japan, and these rifles and bayonets were indeed used in Burma. It's not really clear exactly to what extent, but they did see a little bit of use. What I find really interesting about this bayonet, though, is of all of the different Mauser bayonets out there, nearly every single one of them is made by the usual suspects in Germany or Austria, being OEWG or all of the blade manufacturers in Solingen. This is the only one ever produced in Japan, and it's really got some Japanese design elements to it, which, well, You know what? No, it doesn't. It's pretty much standard. It has a couple of refurbishments which scream Japanese, and that was probably because the Siamese had Japanese tooling when it came time to refurbish these. Now, these were in service all the way through until the 1960s when they were eventually surplused. And when they were surplused, mainly to America, they created a lot of confusion because while they may look like standard Mauser bayonets, they have these funny little squiggly Siamese markings on them that your average person in America had never seen and probably didn't have any way to decipher. It wasn't until relatively recently that we sort of understood the history and the story of these rifles and bayonets. It's getting pretty well understood now, but when they were eventually replaced, they were replaced by the Type 66, which was essentially an Arisaka made for Siam, or Thailand by that stage. In 1939, Siam became Thailand, and they were replaced by the M16. So the US loved their military assistance program, and in the 1960s, they supplied about 85,000 M16s to Thailand. So that's a considerable amount. Now we might jump into the construction of this bayonet, and to begin with, it looks very much like a Mauser bayonet. We've got flat spine, slight false edge, true edge running down length of the blade, and rounded fullers, just a classic Mauser style of blade. And the crossguard looks very much like a model 1904 or model 1912 Mauser bayonet. So I've heard it said that this was actually the bayonet that inspired the model 1904. It was a bit of a game changer when it came out. But the grips are where it becomes a little bit interesting. So initially the grips came with like a circular nut, and you'd send a bolt through there and cut it off and like grind it down, and they were nice big and circular. However, when they were refurbished, as you can see, well, you might not be able to see here, I put some photos up, but we've got our oval nut, and it has a screw going through it, and then the end is cut off and ground flush. And that is very reminiscent, or pretty much identical to what the Japanese did with their Type 30 bayonet. So that's what I say when this is very much a Japanese influence, but this was a refurbishment, and that would have been done with Japanese parts. So these are probably parts from a Japanese Type 30 bayonet. But looking at the rest of it, got a TO mortise, standard press button, nothing too exciting. We don't have a clearance hole, which is very unique for a TO style of mortise, because when the cleaning rod goes in this circular detent down the bottom there, and there's a hole running down the length of the bayonet, when it goes in there, it'll push in debris and grime and dirt. And the clearance hole is a hole that usually sits up here. You can put a little brush through to clear any debris out to stop it from being packed in. Because this doesn't have that clearance hole, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these got filled up with gunk and became quite difficult to fix to the rifles. I haven't seen any photos of the original grips. These are the refurbishment grips, but I believe the originals didn't have a clearance hole either. And I imagine that's something that the Japanese hadn't come across when they were manufacturing these, because they had never used a TO style of mortise before. Other than that, it's just standard Mauser. It's got our nice big pommel, press button, ramped lug, so as the bayonet lug slides inside, it pushes the ramped lug to the side, and then when it passes, it snaps shut behind it. And to remove it, you press the button, it'll disengage, and you pull it off. So that's pretty much what we expect. However, the scabbard here is a little bit different. So, taking a look at the scabbard, it's just a steel constructed scabbard like pretty much all of the Mausers. We've got a ball finale down the bottom, no change, and a nice big throat. However, this is where it gets a little bit different. The construction material is a lot heavier and a lot stronger than what you get on a standard Mauser bayonet. The finish is a lot darker and a lot thicker. So even after all these years, the finish is still in fantastic condition. We have very much a Mauser style of frog stud. However, the German ones had horizontal lines down the bottom and up the top. We don't have that here. And then we have a screw either side retaining the throat. Now this is what really makes it unique from other Mauser style bayonets, if I can get it on camera. you'll see we have this little indentation on the side here. And the purpose of that is when the scabbard is fitted to the bayonet, you can still mount this to the rifle, and the muzzle of the firearm will pass through the muzzle ring and will pass over that little indentation there. Without that indentation, the muzzle would hit the top of the throat and either not engage correctly or push the scabbard slightly off. So that just allows you to have the scabbard fitted to the bayonet while the bayonet is fitted to the rifle, and I believe that was for training purposes. That's really all there is to say about the construction. What these screws are actually called, so the circular bits or the oval bits, I believe they're called, however you pronounce this, I'm not going to try. But yeah, that's what they call them. You put the screws through them. Anyway, we'll jump into markings. I really like the markings on these. So, as you can see down here on the right ricasso, what that says in Thai is RS121, so the original name of the bayonet and the rifle. And that's the same on every single one of these bayonets. Now, generally, the only other marking you will find, or markings, I should say, are down on the base of the pommel. And with my lighting setup, I'll have to put photos up for you to see. So, about halfway down, we've got a serial number, and this one is 577, and then I can't make out the last digit. Considering it's a 577 question mark, I'd say it's one of the first 20,000, so made for the Type 45, not Type 46 rifle, but it makes no difference, it's still a Type 45 bayonet. And beneath that we have an inspection mark, and there's two different inspection marks you can have. The first one is a circle with the Thai B symbol, or their symbol that in their alphabet means B, and that's an abbreviation for Major BAWARDADEJ, this guy. He was a prince of Siam, and I think later on in life he attempted a coup, and he was quite an influential person apparently, but during this period of time he was the inspector of the bayonets, and that was his inspection mark, and you'll find those on the first 20,000 produced. On the second 20,000 produced, you have a different symbol, so it's two circles with a Thai symbol in the middle. And I can't find that one in the Thai alphabet anywhere. From what I've heard though, it's just an army acceptance mark, so perhaps it's a custom symbol that the Thai army used. I really don't know. I don't speak Thai. I don't read it either. But that's really all there is to say about these. They're really cool. When you find them, they are always in terrible condition because they had to survive the tropics. 50, 60 odd years in Thailand is not going to do good things to a bayonet. And usually when you get them, or initially they were in the white. When refurbished, quite a few of them were blued. And this one here has actually been chromed. And the chrome is in very poor condition and pretty much almost completely come off. So I don't know if it was used for drill purposes, if it was done by Bubba, 50 years ago. I really don't know. But very nice bayonet. I like it a lot, and it's really got me interested in the other Siamese bayonets. So before this one, there were a whole bunch of Austrian model of 1888 and 1895 bayonets. You find them very, very occasionally. They're just standard Austrian bayonets, except they'll have Siamese markings on them. I've got my eye on a model of 1888 at the moment. I think there's only 5,000 of them total, and it's very reasonably priced. I've got quite a few other things I want to buy as well, so I'm sort of weighing up whether or not to get it. It's quite nice. And after these came the Type 66, so it's kind of like a shortened version of the Japanese Type 30 bayonet. It's pretty cool. Eventually I'll get one. I just missed out on one a couple of weeks ago, so now that I know more about them, I'll be more motivated to get the next one that comes along. Anyway guys, that's all I have to say about these. If you have any more information, please feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear from you. This is one of the most misidentified bayonets as well. I'm part of a whole bunch of groups online, and This is probably one of the bayonets we get asked to identify probably the most often. This and probably Chilean model 1895. I don't know what it is about the 1895s, but for whatever reason, no one can identify them, and we get it all the time. Anyway, guys, if you made it this far, please feel free to like and subscribe to give me a bit more reach and help me bring more quality videos to you. Thanks for watching.